Um, well, it's been a couple of minutes after 8. We like to keep things punctual at the Watch Collectors Club, so I will just get started. And if more people join in, they'll join in. Really, we're all here for the discussion after the short talk, so we'll see how we get on. Today's talk is going to be about 15 minutes long. It's focusing on Rolex's innovation in the post-war years, more in the watches that they introduce, rather than a technical discussion. But of course, we can go into that a bit more afterwards if people are interested. And yeah, hopefully you'll find it fun. And if you've got any questions, just address them at the end. If you have any technical problems, then try and let me know. Without further ado, I'll introduce myself. My name is Robertson. I'm the CEO and co-founder of the Watch Collectors Club. I'm originally from a small town in northwest England called Birkenhead, near the city of Liverpool. Then I went up to Edinburgh, where it was not usually anywhere near as sunny as this. Rains a lot in Edinburgh. I was there for 13 years. Then I moved down to London for work. And since then, I've started the Watch Collectors Club in London, which is a great city for watches. And we're running these online events so that people who aren't able to come to our events in London are able to join in with the Watch Collectors Club. So straight on to Rolex. Now, Rolex is a fascinating company, got started in 1905, and there is so much to talk about. But in our first talk, we talked about the pre-war years, and now we want to focus on the period just after the Second World War, where Rolex introduced so many amazing watches. But really, we want to start with the war itself, because the stories of Rolex during the war are really quite interesting. And I want to start with this note on the left here, which is a note sent by Rolex with a watch to a prisoner of war in a German prisoner of war camp, an English prisoner of war. And Rolex, having struggled like most Swiss watch companies in the war, because not only could they not find the materials to make the watches, but also it's very hard to get the watches out of Switzerland to supply customers elsewhere in the world. Rolex found this market through the International Red Cross Postal Service of selling watches to men in the prisoner of war camps in Germany and other countries. And what's even more amazing is every single watch that was delivered was accompanied by a note like this, signed by Hans Wilsdorf, the founder of Rolex, that said, "You must not think of paying for the watch until the war is over." And this is quite incredible because, of course, Wilsdorf could not know who would win the war. He could not be confident when the war would end. And this certificate comes from 1943, so a long time before the war ended, but it says you don't have to worry about paying until the war is over. On the right-hand side here, we have an advertisement that was published in America in December 1944. I'm just going to read out what it says. "Restricted production makes Rolex ownership a treasured privilege for the discriminating few. On this momentous Christmas, with its bright beams of new hope surging in the hearts of all, it's a uniquely symbolic gift to commemorate the day of remembrance with the gift of gifts, a Rolex." Now, this was published in the States, and it's Hans Wilsdorf's company clearly saying they think that the war has turned in the favor of the Allies, in favor of the Americans, and that the end may come soon. Now, we, of course, all know that Hans Wilsdorf and Rolex were right, but it's quite remarkable to see these items before that actually happened. And so that's where I wanted to start today, with the fact that Rolex had a better war than many. They managed to continue to sell watches, but most importantly, they continued to develop watches. And so in 1945, they launched the Datejust. Here is a Series 1 Datejust on the right-hand side. You can see the pointed hands, which later got replaced, and also the red date window, the red date in the date window at 3 o'clock there. All of the dates were red in the first model. It's on the Jubilee bracelet, but in a beautiful oyster case. And obviously the oyster was invented in 1927, first waterproof, very successful waterproof watch. It's an absolutely beautiful watch, especially if you can see one of these. Good question. They're expensive, but they are around in good condition. I've seen one in the metal, just on the wrist of someone I met in a watch store. But yeah, they are fantastic timepieces. Small, 36 mil, but really great. And as we know, the Datejust is still being sold today. So in a few years, it'll be the 80th anniversary of this piece. On the left-hand side here, we have the patent drawing from when Rolex patented the Cyclops that we now know features on so many of their watches. And the story behind this is great fun. Basically, the Hans Wilsdorf wife complained that the date was too small to read easily. And then a little while later, he splashed some water on the dial of his watch, noticed that the droplet of water created a lens effect, and exclaimed that he had the solution and challenged his engineers to make a lens within the crystal itself, and the rest is history. We have the Cyclops ever since. Now to move on to a watch that you may not be familiar with, but I wanted to include because it's so extraordinary. This is a triple calendar. They have a few nicknames. So the nicknames among the Rolex collecting community are the Padaloni, which is the nickname for the one on the left, and that's Italian for frying pan, and it's reference 8171. Comes in different metals, and lots of different dials. Whereas the one on the right is much rarer, which, from memory, the reference is 6062. And this one's called the Stelline, referencing the stars on the dial there. And this has the oyster case, so this is not just a triple calendar, but it's also a waterproof one, the one on the right. The calendar has the day and the month in the little windows, and then a pointer date hand with the days of the month surrounding the dial on the outside. This was a very common and popular complication in the middle of the 20th century. There's great examples from other manufacturers like Jaeger-LeCoultre and Vacheron Constantin, among many other others. In modern watches, fascinatingly, Oris still make one of these. It's called the pointer date. It's very popular. And Rolex here, of course, have the moon phase as well. So you get a triple calendar moon phase from this model. They're quite small. They're very beautiful. I've never seen one in the metal. But I wanted to highlight these because it shows that Rolex have done lots of different calendar movements in their past. Today, it's only in the Sky Dweller. But what I find interesting as well is with the recent reintroduction of the Perpetual 1908, maybe we're going to see complications such as this emerge in that range. Now we have a new dress watch range. And I have to say, I hope they do. At some point in the next few years, introduce this complication into that range. The reason I think they'll do it is not because it's a nice idea, but because it will help keep the price of that range of watches nice and high if they add complications. It's already come out at quite a high price, but that would enable them to take the price up higher, which will obviously benefit them. But Rolex do everything slowly, so we may be waiting a while. The next watch to mention is pretty much their most popular and famous watch of modern Rolex, the Submariner. It's an absolutely fantastic watch. It's very famous, and it's got lots of very interesting history. Simply put, it was developed in 1953 and launched at Basel World in 1954. This one on the left is a late 1950s one, so it's not a first series, but it has a lot of the markers that those first series Submariners have. It has the big, thick loom on the dial. It has the bezel there, obviously. And it has the chunky case and the chunky oyster crown. Rolex introduced them and then innovated very quickly, so you have a lot of different upgrades following 1953 onwards, and lots of different tweaks to the case, the dial, the hands, and the movement continue to be improved. The one on the right there, you can see where the bezel went to straight away. So the bezel has this much more easier to use external steel bit, so that people can turn, the divers can turn it in their gloves. And this was designed as a dive watch to be used by professional divers from day one. The head of Rolex Geneva was a huge fan of scuba diving and underwater exploration. It was he who worked with Jean-Jacques Cousteau, the famous French diver, to develop these watches. It wasn't long until they got upgraded to 200 meters, and now today, of course, they're 300-meter water resistant. But the Submariner is instantly recognizable, and again, is a hugely important watch today, but introduced in 1953 to great success. The date came along, by the way, Submariner date in 1967, and in 1969, the solid gold editions. Another watch introduced in 1953, which is almost as famous, but not quite as popular, it's the Rolex Explorer. This one on the left is from 1953, showing the first white dial with the famous 312, 3, 6, and 9 numerals there. Some really interesting, beautiful hands there. And this was designed for mountaineers. Rolex really did want to make a tough watch for explorers and mountaineers. This is a bit smaller, easier to fit under the technical clothing one might be wearing while doing those things. It's automatic, and it's designed to take shocks, and it's easy to read. It was a great success. I mean, this continued to evolve as well, to be slightly improved, until this watch on the right, the 1016, was introduced, which was in 1963. And this is notable because it has the famous black dial. This one's obviously had some time damage with the loom there. But this watch is remarkable because within Rolex's entire range, it's the longest in production. So it was in production from 63 to 89. and is the longest in series model of all. Today, they're still in the 36 millimeter size that's always proven so popular, and they're a fantastic addition to the Rolex range. Finally, we're going to talk about the day-date today. The next one we'll talk about the chronographs and the Daytona at the next online event. But today I wanted to finish with the day-date, or as it's later became known, the Rolex President. This one here is a picture of a first series. This is from Goldberger's collection. It's pretty much the earliest known serial number, they think, as well, this one. Obviously in solid gold with the day of the week there at the 12 o'clock position. And in Italian, again, we have the red date in the 3 o'clock date window. And it's one of the first watches to have a lot of text on the dial. This is where Rolex is starting to really go for more text with the Submariner and this watch. They were launched in '56 with both the fluted and smooth bezel. And they didn't get the bracelet. So the President bracelet was not until 1959. And it's not entirely clear whether Rolex themselves actually referred to this watch as a President at the same time. The bracelet has been found as a President bracelet in catalogs, but the watch has not been found as referred to that this early. However, what did happen was the watch was incredibly popular. Just today, as it was then, it became popular with people at the peaks of their career, business leaders, and of course, officials and country leaders. And then we see this advert on the right-hand side from the late 1960s, where Rolex are saying, if you're in the United Nations, if you're an important person of power in your country, then you might be wearing a day date. And this is where the label president stuck. It was also Lyndon B. Johnson, the US president who became president when Kennedy was assassinated. He wore a gold Rolex day date. And so that's where the association came from as well. But it is not known exactly when Rolex themselves chose to start calling this the President. I find this watch a fantastic example. If I have on my list of Rolexes I would always desire, this one with the black onyx, either a gold dial, like in the advert there, beautiful high quality shiny gold dial, or the onyx stone, semi-precious stone dial examples are particularly special, I find, and it's just such a high quality watch. The Rolex during this period had a lot of technical innovation. So we had the water resistance with making sure those oyster cases could be sized up for the Submariner, and ending up with the special Submariner case. Extra sturdy, and of course water resistance improving throughout the 1950s. The day date was the first watch to be superlative chronometer certified. Today, every Rolex movement is superlative chronometer certified, and that means that they're accurate to plus or minus 2 seconds per day, which is more than the official Swiss COSC certification of -3 to +5. And then in the 1970s, we got continued innovation with the introduction of the quick set of the date and then the day date as the movement upgrades came to those models in the 1970s. This is what Rolex do. They gently improve everything as best they can. I mean, at the moment, we're now seeing movement upgrades every 10 years, but it really comes from this culture in both the pre-war era and the post-war era of constantly trying to make these watches better within the design language that they've chosen for each range. And of course, we've seen that design language continue through to today. I'm going to finish talking there. I'm going to open it up for a discussion. So it's over to you with any further questions. I'll try and answer, or I'll answer after the, I'll get back and try and get back to you after the fact. But really, we just wanted to discuss what you like about these watches, what you think about them, what you dislike about them, whether you own any, and just open the discussion up there, really.
Thanks, Hamish. I really enjoyed that. I thought I would ask a slightly random question. Do you know if there are any Rolexes that they started making in that early post-war period, the 1950s, that they don't make anymore, or have they kept making all of them?
Well, the pre-Daytona chronographs. So they've only ever made one chronograph, but it's changed style over time.
Yeah, good point.
So they discontinued those when they went all in on the chronograph that we now know as the Daytona in 64, 63 or 65.
Yeah.
And then that, famously, which we'll talk about next time, wasn't actually that popular. So, they've never been known as a chronograph house. Yeah. And they weren't, it was because they weren't that successful in chronographs. And the turnograph, you could say, but most people think that the turnograph became the Submariner or became the Submariner and the GMT.
Yeah. Then I wonder how many different versions of each of those watches they've been through since in the last sort of, what, 70 years. It must be hundreds. In
I mean,
total.
the collectors will tell you there are hundreds. I mean, especially for the sub. I mean, I was just on a page earlier. I might see if I've still got it up, but it really just showed just how many subs there were. So how many different details there are to look out for each sub. And I think that's what's led to the collector community being what it is.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
The fact that these watches have so many different details to talk about, both on the dial and visual side, but also in the movement, and what got upgraded when and what the changes were. That's really that and a sheer number of them, because Rolex has always been a big producer in the luxury watch industry. That's what's led to, I guess, led to the collector enthusiasm that's now spread to pretty much the whole of the watch world.
Yeah. Do you know when it was that Rolex got over 1 million watches a year produced?
No, I don't off the top of my head, but I think it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But you've got to remember that the million number for Rolex includes Tudor.
Okay, yeah, good point.
I always remind people that, as far as anyone knows, Rolex branded watches are still under 1 million.
Right.
And that the best guesses are, the only thing you'll ever see in an official industry thing is between 750,000 and 1 million Rolexes a year. And I think opinions now saying it's probably between 900,000 and 1 million a year. And then Tudor are on top. So Rolex Group make, 1.4 million or whatever it is.
Yep.
And I've never seen anyone sort of really trying to make the point that isn't what's happening. So, you could suspect Rolex just like everybody thinking that. And actually they only make 500,000 a year. But the big report that now is easy to get hold of, which is sort of known as the Morgan Stanley report, which came out a few weeks ago, that just keeps confirming Rolex at around those numbers.
Yeah.
But no, I don't know which year. It's a good question. And if you Google the answer, you can probably get to it after not too long. But as with everything, you don't take the first answer as gospel.
Yeah.
Does anyone who's listening in have a question, or even just have one of these Rolexes that they'd like to tell us about?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Thanks for the talk. Yeah, it's very interesting on the moon phase. I'm always fascinated by a bit more out of the box complications like moon phase, chiming mechanisms, or any sort of tourbillons. And I don't think I've seen Rolex getting too much out of the way of making anything too much of a complication from that sort of perspective, looking at these three types of complications that are a bit more of a higher end watches. And for the moon phase, I guess is the one that's most in reach for people. They don't have, at the moment, they don't have any moon phases, the new ones, or anything recent that's come out.
No.
Think of, like, I don't know, chiming and tourbillons. That's like our question. I don't even know, have I ever done like a tourbillon or a chiming watch?
No, never. No, there's no Rolex chiming watch. There's no Rolex alarm watch. There's definitely not a tourbillon on the Rolex that they put there. They would say to you, Stephen, that the Yachtmaster is very complicated because it times down to the start of the race and then times after the race has started, which is a complication of some impressive design. But of course, nobody really uses it, and not many people who buy the Yachtmaster even probably understand it does that. And the Sky Dweller has a unique calendar complication just because of its design. It's not uniquely telling you the calendar. So I think Rolex would say, we're very clever. We made these too, and nobody else has made these. But I agree with you. What's interesting about them during their entire period of success is they've never shown any interest in making the really high horology complications.
Yeah.
The moon phases they made with the Poloni and the Stelloni that you showed, and then they did a Cellini moon phase up until about 4 years ago, I think, which was really beautiful. Yeah,
I haven't seen that. I must have seen it, but I don't remember it.
Barack Obama wore one.
Ah, okay.
But really beautiful watches. So that's been replaced by the 1908, and yeah, as you said earlier, it'd be interesting to
I know it now. Yeah, I see the one you mean.
interesting to see what gets added to that 1908 range over the next 5 to 10 years, as you say.
Yeah, I think we'll see a variety. I'd hope we see a variety.
Yeah.
It's interesting that the watch owners, they started experimenting with the new quirky dials and more sort of popular type of watches, but they're like, I guess, more to the newer generations that be more appealing to them. But they wouldn't like go and try to put out some complication of the sort of as I said, it's a tourbillon, like a super high end. They can do like one, two, three of them. It seems like there's no sort of interest to go that way.
No.
Yeah, I wonder if partly that's just a sort of practical manufacturing point, because Rolex make their watches in relatively high numbers for a expensive watch brand. So if you compare the number of Submariners they make to, or let's say even the Yachtmaster 2, probably the most complicated watch they do, compare that to how many IWC perpetual calendars are made across all the metals and across all the ranges. They'll be making thousands of times that number of watches, and it's really complicated to make a high complication. You just probably find they just can't make the numbers work, which is a shame, because it'd be fascinating to see what they do with it.
Yeah, so you think it's from a commercial manufacturing perspective, there's just no interest going that way.
Yeah, and also probably just their brand. I don't know how it would. They're not really known as a ultra high end movement manufacturer. They are. I mean, they make very decent, robust, and reliable movements, but they're not necessarily known for their movements. Whereas many of the other Swiss brands are. It seems Rolex is best known for being incredibly highly engineered cases and incredibly highly engineered designs, and really reliable, really robust, just very practical watches. So I guess I don't know how a more complicated watch would fit into that.
Yeah.
But there'd be demand for it, of course.
Yeah, no, I yeah. I guess they stick to the range of the market, not like Grand Seiko. It's Seiko. It's going from the Kodo all the way down to
Yeah.
Oh, I think we're going to get a lot out of Grand Seiko now they've released the Kodo. I suspect we're going to get a lot of fancy stuff. I think they want to prove that they're the equal of everybody they can. But I think I agree with Ed. I think Rolex, they don't need to. I mean, don't forget Rolex love doing off-catalog gem set watches. And that they annoy everybody because they're not in the catalog, but then they sort of pictures leak out every year. And they've always done that. So for them to sort of sell watches that are much more expensive and make money associated with them, I think they prefer to just do that than worry about the complexity of manufacturing and servicing and maintaining and servicing a tourbillon.
Okay. And what do you think about the new ones that came out this year? Some of the out of the beaten path ones.
Yeah, I was excited by the color, having a bit of fun. Clearly a response to some of the other watches that we've seen from other watch companies. And just, yeah, as you said earlier, to appeal to younger consumers who may be looking for just a bit more fun. And just, every so often Rolex throw out something odd. They did the Rainbow Daytona a few years ago, and that's very, very famous, sells for $400,000 now for a real one. So I think we'll see more of that. that they're trying to manage the Daytona hype down. So we saw the changes in the Daytona, and last year we saw, big reduction in the number of different Daytonas you could get. Now we've seen a slight tweak, so I think they'll stay stable in the Daytonas for a while. But yeah, the amazing thing, what amazes me now is, you go on the website, and in the UK, and actually there's not very many different models available on the website. So again, that's a bit of a change in Rolex's style. The last 20 years, there's been a lot of options in each range, but they've brought that right down. And I don't quite get that. I mean, given their production numbers, but it's a strategy. It keeps things simple, and yeah, and they're still ridiculously popular. And the gold GMT and the black GMT were very, very well received. What did you like about them, Stephen?
The GMT ones? I'm not sure. I remember which one. I need to have a look. Which one is it? But I just remember the colorful dials ones, and I'm still fascinated with the palm tree green dial. Was it the Day, or I don't remember which one was it? Like that for me is like something that I would really want to get at some point. In 2021, I was in a lot of green dial across. Everybody was pushing, and I think the palm dial. Rolex.
In the Oyster.
The Oyster.
Yeah.
It was just I went a few times. I went to Bucharest, tried to ask and see. It's like no, it's not going to get anytime soon.
I mean, but if you think, hang on, I'll just share this again, so everyone knows what we're talking about. But if you look at these prices, so they're in UK prices, so you'll have to bear with me because it's defaulted to that. But the premium they used to be at has very much fallen. So they're still at a premium to retail. But if this green dial is now discontinued, which their indications are that it is, then the prices are actually still coming down. So I suspect if you're patient, Stephen.
No, he meant the palm dial one.
The palm dial. Oh, sorry, I thought you said green dial.
Yeah, so there was the green dial thing when the whole year was many brands were launching all the green dial stuff across different brands, and then the palm dial.
There's no palm dials on Chrono 24, so that shows you there aren't very many of those around.
I don't think there will. It probably needs a few years until something pops up.
That is interesting.
I really like the palm dial, the green palm dial. I ordered one 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, and it's not arrived yet.
It was 2020 that came out. 2020.
Yeah, 2020. Yeah. So no luck. No, I really like that they every couple of years just change the colors. I think that's a fun thing to do. I wasn't convinced by yeah, it's really pretty.
Yeah, I do like it. I don't think I'd wear it. I know you like it a lot, Ed, and especially with the fluted bezel when you see those pictures.
Yeah.
Again, you can look at these prices and they're kind of telling you, yeah, these are quite rare.
So you're saying that the Rolex invented the loop bit on the glass? They were the first one. How do I was wondering, how do they actually make this? Is this like glued on top? Is it like how has actually happened that
they polish it in?
Polish it like they have the big piece and then they just polish the part of it.
Yeah,
I always thought that it's some glued on top of it or something like that because it's like magnifying, right?
Yeah, no, it's not stuck on. No, it's you take a thicker bit of glass or sapphire and then you make it thinner and leave that bit. So they do it the hard way, the expensive way.
I don't know that. That must waste so much sapphire.
Yeah. I mean, it's a clever thing to do, and that's why no one else does it.
Yeah. Which do about the manufacturing? I said that the new factory is moving quite a bit of the production. I don't remember the name of the city, but they've increased massively the capacity.
Oh, the new one they're planning.
Well, the planning is it already kind of started, or it's like at some percentage already made, and
Well, if you're talking about the factory that was just announced this year, but rumored last year and announced this year,
Yeah.
they haven't started building it yet. But they have said it will be used to increase production as well as increasing servicing capacity. So then what everyone will do is look at them building it, and when they see how big it is, they'll try and decide how much they think it'll increase production capacity. The Rolex will never tell us.
Yeah, it is getting better. Well, first of all, hi everyone. Sorry to interrupt.
Welcome.
Yeah, long time no see, Hamish.
Yeah, welcome back.
So it's getting better here. A friend of mine got his Starbucks in like 4 months, so that's good. That's a good indicator. For me, I'm just looking forward to new designs. I just didn't find the right spot.
What would you like to see?
There's the Datejust with the blue dial. It's there's like octagons in it.
Yeah,
You know yeah. I was looking forward for like the yellow one. If they can do a yellow one in full steel, that would be a great one.
Interesting. So what, like a goldy color?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you have to go in and ask. They I don't. They used to just respond to literal feedback from their ADs. I'm guessing they're a lot more sophisticated now in how they choose what they do. But you're right. It would look good in. I've just turned off the share. I'll turn it back on again so we can all know what you're talking about.
Now they only make it in two-tone.
So there's this one here. Do you mean the blue one? Is that? I'm a bit reluctant to click on an individual listing because it might be fake.
Yeah, the blue one is. This is the green one.
Yeah.
There is a yellow one, but it's in two-tone.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I know the one you're about. Yeah, there you go. Go to the right, that one. Yeah.
But that's the palm dial.
No, they do a.
Oh.
Sorry, yeah, they do. They did one that was like the hexagonal as well.
Okay.
It was called honeycomb.
This is not going to bring up the right thing.
It will.
Wait,
No.
let me see.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you want that in steel, not gold. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it will look great.
That would look cool, actually.
Would you think about the open case? We're gonna see something the next year after. It's getting quite popular. They're going crazy now with the colors. Maybe they're gonna open the back for some.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, they did it for the Daytona, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
There it is. Yeah.
That's from this year, or
yeah.
They're gonna, what they'll do in Rolex style is now they've done it so it's on the perpetual 1908, so it's on all of those. And I reckon they'll now roll it into the platinum versions of everything. But it's not easy to do because they finish their movements, but they don't finish them like other watch companies finish them. So they'll have to up their game on their movement finishing. They'll just have to, because we've now got everybody sort of looking at things from Lang and Zona and FP Journe and saying, look at this movement finishing and Breguet. So if Rolex are going to say, okay, well, we're going to have the movement on display, they'll have to actually raise their game. And you can see on this one they have. So the edge of the movement here, if you can see the little hand, that's beveled there. There's no way that they've been beveling any of the other movements. No way. So yeah, they've polished them with the Geneva stripes, but they've never finished the bridges like this. So this is them upping their game on the movement finishing in order to put this in, which is why it's on one of the rarest watches in the catalog, the platinum cased watches. So if they're going to do it for others, it's going to take them a decade. Because that has to be done by hand, right? So this bit, the Geneva stripes, can be done by a machine, but that bit will be done by hand on the edge there.
If you think of, have you seen the Tudor? They published a video about their factory. Everything is made by machine.
Yeah.
yeah, if Rolex can do that, I think they can like make it easier for them.
Yeah, they could, but I think in the watch industry, doing this by hand is seen as a very important aspect of movement finishing. So I would be very surprised if they actually mechanize the finishing, but they can, of course. I mean, of course they can mechanize anything they want to, especially Rolex. But you know, if you're selling this, I don't know what the platinum Daytona price is, 60 grand. Against a Lange for 60 grand or a Patek for 60 grand that is 100%. Because I'm done by hand.
This comes the question then: if you got 50 grand lying around somewhere, would you go for a Daytona or would you actually go for a Patek or for AP?
I mean, someone else answer first. I know my answer.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried on. I know a chap who's got a platinum Daytona, and I tried it on, and it was a Daytona, a really heavy Daytona. It didn't feel like a 50 grand watch for sure. Whereas you try on a really high end Patek or a Lange or anything else in that price bracket, it feels like a really special watch. Rolex have always been very clever at using precious metals in their chunky sports watches because they can justify charging a really high price for them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, as Hamish says, the movement finishing so far isn't any better on those watches just because they're more expensive. Whereas with a Lange for 50 grand, you get a really beautiful hand finish movement.
Yeah, I mean, that's a Lange one there I've just brought up, which I think is probably at the moment around 50, 60 grand. This is the anniversary, so it would have been more, but a Lange one today I think is around that price. So it's just a different level of movement finishing to what Rolex offer. So personally, I'm not a Daytona guy, so I wouldn't buy a Daytona for any reason. The only one I really like is the one with the El Primero movement in from the 1980s, but even then, they're a bit chunky for me. So no, if I was spending 50 grand on one watch, it wouldn't be a Rolex. And if it was a Rolex, it'd be a vintage, solid gold vintage day date. If I had to be a Rolex. Those chronographs with the stellene dials are incredible, but they're now all over $1 million at auction. So that's gone. But yeah, and I like the subs. I like the vintage subs because they're smaller, you know. Today's subs are a bit chunky for me, but the vintage ones, whenever you handle those, that one in the presentation, I'd worn in the metal, and they're fantastic size. And even the 1980s subs, that smaller, the less thick version, I like those as well.
And the same with the Sea Dwellers from the late 80s and early 90s. They're really beautiful size. Really beautiful, really comfortable.
If you go for a vintage sub, for example, would you have any concerns in terms of how old is it? Like, would you buy if it's less than 70s, less than 80s? Well, is there like a limit? So it's a bit too old, maybe I don't want to risk it, or maybe it's not.
No, I mean, if I was going to buy something of that value, I would. What we always say is, you know, make sure you buy the seller, not the watch. So I'd be buying it from someone, a dealer or a store, a watch store that was of such good reputation that I knew that I'd be happy with it being what it's supposed to be and being in good condition. So I probably wouldn't even buy it at auction. I'd probably want to make sure that I really knew the dealer was really good with his Rolexes.
And the radioactivity on the dials, to which did they have also till the 50s, 60s, or would you check it yourself, or?
It's fine. It's fine. So I've got a JLC Dirty Dozen watch from 1945 that has the fully loomed dial with the radium, and the guidance for it is absolutely fine. There's one Rolex that's very dangerous, which is one of the for some reason there was a dangerous batch of luminous material that went into a load of GMTs, the ones with the Bakelite dials, bezels, and a lot of them have been replaced. But when you say dangerous, all it means is basically don't breathe near it if the case back is open. So that's what
Right.
you're talking about. You're not talking about, oh, it's dangerous to have it on your wrist, or it's dangerous to have in your bedroom while you're asleep. None of that is true. The danger comes when you're servicing the watch and you might dislodge some of that old radioactive material and inhale it. But again, with most Swiss watches from that period, it's not actually that big a risk either.
Okay. Have you seen somebody like test with a Geiger counter, or see of like somebody around an event or anything like that in person? Some of these.
No, I've not. You can see people doing it online, but I've not done it.
The other thing, just to note with really old Rolexes, is they're not as accurate at keeping the time as more modern ones. So they've had periods in their history where they've been really, really great timekeepers, and other periods where they've not. So if you're interested in buying one, then it's worth doing lots of research as to sort of what to expect with that watch. It's also worth adding that mostly vintage Rolexes are not very waterproof anymore, unless they've always been serviced at regular intervals. Although that being said, I'm sure if you sent back a 1970s Submariner to Rolex, they would make it waterproof again.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking of getting a vintage one because I don't think I want to get a new one. And I'm a bit more interested in the history of some of those vintage models, and I think it's going to be a perfect first to get one of those, say the sub or probably sub, most likely.
Nice.
But I'm thinking it's slow, and I'll see what I find anywhere.
Yeah, so I just dropped a link in the chat from a very, very prestigious Rolex dealer, and his website's got a load of blog pieces on it. And he still deals as well, but you can sort of Google around. So there's plenty of info. But yeah, if you're going to go for especially as far back as a 50s Submariner, very much take your time and very much buy from someone who's been honestly dealing within them for decades. Or, just if you go on the forums, then just make sure that if you're buying from someone on the forum, then they've been buying and selling on that forum with great success for years. Because a watch like that, you might end up buying direct from another collector. I've just spent the whole day enmeshed in reading about military submariners for this week's blog post, and people are like, a lot of collectors will only sell it to another collector. So if that's what you're really interested in, then yeah, you might want to get to know some of the people on rolexforums.com or some of the other forums.
What exciting thing to be looking for.
Very. But a guy, we have a member, Adam, who came down last year, and he just bought a pretty much 1960s GMT that was in mint condition. So they are out there. They do trade. Let's just have a look.
How much are they? Vintage GMTs in mint condition.
I don't know. I didn't ask him, but I just thought, let's have a look on pretty much the most famous dealer in the world, who is still dealing. So
Why did James Bond drop the Rolex for the Omega?
Well, that's not really what happened. What happened was he dropped the Rolex for Seiko.
Oh, really?
Wore Rolex in the first 4, which was Sean Connery's Rolex, and then the producer's Rolex, I think. And then Seiko for 5 films with like.
Oh, really? Which one from which movie starts the Seiko?
Oh, like loads of them. Hang on a second. I'll find it for you. Anyway, there's your answer. This is one of the most reputable watch dealers in the world, if not the most reputable. He's based in Florida.
Oh, so I definitely don't have 100 grand to drop on that one. That's for sure.
So I'll leave it to you. I'll leave it to you to check out the rest of his options.
Wow.
But it's worth adding that this is the sort of price you pay for The absolute
Oh,
wow, that was expensive.
Yeah, it's
That's
getting crazy. It's
expensive.
getting crazy here.
Wow, I did not expect that. So Bakelite dial means it's first, so 58. There you go. So yeah,
This,
and
this is a lot of history with those that care.
that's why this is so expensive. Okay, so it's had private collection once, plus one original owner, plus one service, plus an intact Bakelite dial. So that's why that is that expensive. But it also means it might be quite radioactive. Oh, how much is the Domino's? This is a famous Rolex. So yeah, that's a very reasonable price. I'll send that to Stuart. We have a guy who comes along, he collects Air Kings. So when I see an interesting one, I send him it by email. I'll just make a note of that. Someone else was asking something while I was just clicking on those. What was it?
Is anyone considering buying a Rolex now?
I'm always considering buying a Rolex. I've been wearing my fiance's Explorer for the last week, and I've really enjoyed it. It's really comfortable. It's the steel and gold one, and yeah, really like wearing that. But I'm not a big fan of any of the sort of bigger modern sports watches, unless they're in yellow gold. I really like yellow gold watches. So we've got an event with Watchfinder on Thursday this week, and that's exploring the Submariner. So I'm hoping to try on some interesting gold Submariners. Yeah, and then I'm on the list for the date just again. But the palm dial one, I'd be really interested in that. I guess to Amar's point, none of the designs are really jumping out at me at the moment. Nothing is really exciting. I don't find anything really exciting. So every now and again, I sort of wear one for a little while and really enjoy it, and then sort of forget about it, and something else more interesting comes along. So, but then I've got quite a lot of watches, and it's the sort of luxury of having lots of choices. You can pick and choose what you want to wear when you want to wear it, and you do get bored of watches. So you're thinking of a vintage sub, Stephen. Do you know which reference number you're thinking of, or are you just starting to have a look now?
No idea. I think it might not even be Submariner. I don't know what I'm gonna find in one, but kind of like in the next year and a half sort of thing. Yeah. Looking to see where I end up, pretty much, or who I speak with, and see where things go. I'm not like determined to I need to go and buy one tomorrow, sort of thing.
So it's worth if you go on. In fact, I'll find you the video and I'll send it. The Dinky did these great videos where they went through every reference number of a bunch of different Rolexes, and it's a really good way of.
I can bring it up. Hang on.
Oh, yeah, if you could find it.
Yeah, just look at the James Bond list. It's got a Gruen. How do you pronounce this? It looks fascinating.
Gruen.
That's not been made anymore. That doesn't exist, that brand, no?
No.
It's defunct now.
Yeah, but they yeah, I mean, I think it's just, I presume somebody owns the IP, but yeah. Right. Nearly there. Sorry, I'm being a bit slow. But well. This is what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
you might have watched that at some point.
Yes,
Yeah. They do a few of them. They're really good.
Yeah, what do you think about the Watches in the Wild, the new 4 episodes?
I haven't seen that yet.
I haven't seen that either.
Fantastic.
Oh, I need to watch that.
This is the Submariner I most want.
Yeah. I love that one.
And then of the vintage ones, I like the one that was in the picture in the talk, the red triangle
Wait.
one.
Is that a submariner and a president's bracelet?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they had all these funny little models that they only made for a year, and incredibly rare, really interesting, just slightly different. They weren't very popular when they came out, and now they're impossible to get hold of.
No, it wasn't that they weren't popular, it's just the evolution. They kept evolving. Like a lot. And as I said, that just makes them ridiculous collecting.
Yeah.
What's the strap called? The one at the bottom right corner. That like the very vintage type of leather, simple.
That one.
That one I like quite a lot.
I don't know what is there a standard name for that style, Ed?
Yeah, and it begins with a 6. That number. But interestingly, the good thing about most Submariners, to be honest, is they look good on every color strap, and you could get one from the 1980s and put it on a brown leather strap, and it would look pretty similar to that, and it wouldn't be ridiculously expensive. It'd be expensive, but not ridiculous.
Yeah.
But Submariners and GMTs they go so well with different color straps.
Yeah, I mean, I just found this, and they haven't given it a name. It just said it's a vintage style. So this is a very, very well regarded British strap company.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if there's a formal name, I'm afraid, for that one. But they do look good. Yeah, they look good on almost any sort of steel mid-century or late 20th century watch that's not too chunky. So I guess to finish then, I've sort of said what my Grail day date and Grail Submariner is. Has anyone else got a sort of actual Grail Rolex, or the ones we've been talking about?
Yeah, I like the turnograph. I was looking for one for a good price.
Yeah, I really like
them. There's a lot of turnographs out there.
Yeah, but they get the prices are a bit silly.
Are they?
Yeah.
Which one did you fancy, Amar? Or if you're there?
I like the one with the black mid dial.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
Black dial.
Yeah.
Let's have a look.
It's not a glossy black. It's like matte black.
Yeah.
There you go. Nice.
Yeah, that's the late one. That's with the embossed bezel. Kind of crazy, that one. Is that the one you meant, Amar?
No, a recent version, more recent version.
It's got like a red. I think it's got a red hand.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Oh, I see. Oh, that one.
No, the next one. Yeah, this one.
Yeah.
I've never seen it in my life.
Yeah, I saw them for the first time only the other day. Yeah, it's quite an unusual watch because it says it's a date just turnograph.
Yeah.
And it's got the date just size bezel, but with the numbers on. Yeah. And it's got a different case. So quite an interesting watch, that. Sort of longer.
Yeah. I really like them.
You see it in a first time, you don't think it's a Rolex. Like,
no.
It looks fake.
Yeah. I think that's just a cool thing about it, isn't it?
Yeah. It's different. Very different.
I really like. For me, I think my dream one is a Bark day date, a Bark Bark bracelet day date.
Yeah, I've seen one in the metal. They're incredible. But look at those prices.
Yeah. Oh no, that's
not even the one. That's not even the nice one.
No, if you do, you spelled it wrong. It's Bark, not dark.
Oh, did I put dark? Oh, there we go.
Hopefully not as expensive. I mean, they are expensive, but not as Not as
No
bad.
diamonds.
And they used to. It's another Rolex that people used to not like at all. 37. Oh,
Yeah, tastes change with time.
they do, yeah.
There you go. Bark bezel, bark bracelet, and the crown.
I remember when they announced the palm dial, the green one.
Yeah.
I didn't like it at first. I think it was like childish in some way, but now I do like it.
Yeah, I as soon as I saw that, I loved that one. It was just, I just thought, oh yeah, this is one that I could go for. I stupidly didn't quick enough.
That's a surprisingly good price.
Yeah.
All right. This is gold as well. The whole.
So you probably want to do a bit of research about that. It looks a little bit too good to be true, but maybe Americans just don't like the bark, and that's why these are bad prices.
Yeah.
Um,
How about you, Stephen? Is there a dream Rolex for you?
It's just the Submariner. I just want any sort of Submariner, the vintage, probably vintage Submariner, and then an Explorer as well.
yeah.
And that green dial, the palm dial, got me, time.
Yeah.
But nothing crazy. No Daytonas, no Yacht Masters, no. It's the complicated one. The one we talked earlier, the most expensive one with the complications.
Oh,
What's it called?
The Yachtmaster and the Sky Dweller.
Sky Dweller. Yeah, that's a bit. You said I feel like if we go above like 30, 35 grand, then we go into the world of AP and Patek. For me, that's like kind of next step.
Yeah.
Sort of how I see it. So, for example, looking at some Grand Seikos and then Grand Seiko 7-8 grand, but do I want to have 7-8 grand for Grand Seiko? I want to get a Rolex for 7-8 grand.
Yeah,
that's the kind of way I'm thinking. Even though it would be good to have one Grand Seiko, but it wouldn't be coming up before the Rolex.
Yeah, sounds fair. Sounds fair.
It's the way I've kind of mapped it out, the future.
Well,
that's a good way of doing it.
That's what it's all about. That's what watch collecting requires: patience and saving up money. So, yeah. Well, we're on the hour there, so we'll finish. Thank you very much, everyone, for your contributions. It's been a great chat. As always, the time flies when you're talking about watches. I hope you enjoyed the talk. Next month, which I think is on May 15th, I'm just going to do the Daytona story. So I'll take you through what where it came from, the chronographs that came before it, how it ended up with the name, and then what happened next in terms of it going crazy. I mean, really crazy when you look in context how crazy the Paul Newman dials were when they were released, and equally unpopular. And then what happened after they stopped being sold, and demand and collectability of the watch went crazy. So we'll talk about that next time if you can join us. If not, we'll post it on YouTube after the event. But thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Nice to see
Thank
you.
you.
Nice to meet you soon. Thanks.
Guys, again. Looking forward to the next one.
Thank you. Cheerio.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.